Hi, my name is Mike Montgomery, and today I'm going to show you how to build this mid-century modern inspired beam style bed on Modern Builds. To preface this build, I want to say that I'm not going to give an incredible amount of measurements. There's a lot of room for variance within this project, so a lot of pieces are going to have to be cut to fit. Granted, in my written article, I'm going to give all the information you'll need to be able to build this yourself, but you're just going to have to do a little bit of math on your own. So the main beams of this bed are made out of 4x4s, and I made sure and paired 4x4s that had grain that ran in a similar direction and looked good together. Next, I planed the surface that the two pieces would be joined together with and the face opposite that. Then I marked and drilled holes for dowels. This is how I'm going to be attaching the two together. It's not absolutely necessary, but it's going to help line everything up really well. Then I could glue and clamp everything together. And once the glue had dried, I could run the two faces, the top and the bottom, that had not yet been planed through the planer. Here, I'm just squaring up one end past the snipe that the planer made, and then I'm measuring to 81.5 inches, and these are going to be my two side pieces. Then I cut my front beam, which is going to be 76 inches plus the width of my two side beams. Now, you're not going to see the back stretcher, so I just used a single 4x4. And once I knew everything was square, I marked and drilled for dowels on the tops of where all my beams met. I'm not going to be gluing these dowels in. All they're there for is for alignment purposes. That way, when I take the bed apart and put it back together, I can line everything up really square. The majority of this bed is actually held together with pocket screws. Now, I have a Craig K5 jig, which isn't actually supposed to drill through 4x4s, but I found a really cool video from a YouTube channel called Saws and Scraps that explains how you can kind of work around that. I'll link it in the description. What I'm doing here is making a rabbet on the inside corner of each of my two side beams. Now, it's kind of hard to explain, but this is where all of the 2x4 cross supports are going to be able to join the rest of the bed. And once I removed that piece, I just cleaned it up with a chisel. Then, while I had the table saw out, I went ahead and ripped 1.5 inches off of my back support. Now, this is going to allow room for the headboard to be able to sit behind it and screw into it. Now, this was a little bit of an issue I didn't think about, is the fact that I needed to join these two pieces together, and the rabbet kind of made that impossible. So I just glued in a piece of the offcuts, and it was okay. Then I could go ahead and put all my pocket screws in. And once the frame was together, I could add all of my 2x4 slats with pocket holes as well. The reason I'm using pocket screws here is because instead of drilling into that thin piece above the 2x4s, I'm drilling into the body of the beams, and that's a lot stronger. Then I went ahead and added a couple more 2x4 cross beams. That way everything would be as strong as I could possibly make it. The legs I'm going with are from a company called Industrial by Design. They're a set of 6-inch raw steel hairpin legs. Of course, you can paint these to match whatever color you want, but I'm keeping the raw steel finish. I love the way it gives a modern and industrial feel to whatever you put them on. Not to mention, they're a super easy leg to install and give whatever you put them on a really high-end finish. Now, my client wanted a little more room underneath the bed, so I made a simple riser block with some 2x4 scraps. So if you've seen many of my projects in the past, you've probably seen a few videos sponsored by Industrial by Design before. And that's because they're a really great company that makes a really great product. Everything that they make that I've tried out has been super heavy duty and has never failed on me. Not to mention they look great and are a really affordable price. So make sure and check out Industrial by Design's website, link is in the description, as well as a code to get 10% off your next purchase. And with the legs on, I could go ahead and flip the bed over, and I was already surprised at how sturdy it was. Alright, so I've got a minor problem that I kind of knew about, but I was just really pushing off because I didn't want to have to worry about it, but I kind of have to address it now. This piece right here needs to sit flush with the rest of these 2x4 supports. The headboard is going to sit flush against the back of this piece, but the mattress is going to sit on top of this piece. So I'm going to have to take this stretcher off and run it through the table saw, that way it matches the height of the rest of these supports. Let's do it. So after I scored my line, I realized that there were still dowels pinning everything together, so I had to use my Japanese handsaw and cut through one of those dowels. Once it was cut to height, I could go ahead and reinstall it using the same holes that were already there to keep everything aligned. Next, I could go ahead and cut my headboard to length. Now, anytime you're cutting plywood with a circular saw, 1, you'll want to use a straight edge, but 2, you'll want to cut it upside down so that your good face is facing down.
It'll give you a lot less tear out that way.
All right, so the next thing I need to figure out is the headboard. I've got it rested on some blocks, so it's the height that it will be off the ground, but I need to figure out how tall I want it to be. This is the full 48-inch sheet of plywood, and I think it's just too high. Something around this height, I think, will look really natural. From the floor to the top of the beam is about 10.5 inches, just over that. So I think if I use the rule of thirds and go 3 times that height to 31.5, that'll put me about right here, which I think will sit really nice.
So my clamping straight edge only has a capacity of 50 inches, so I just found a really straight 1x4, which is pretty hard to come by, and used that as my straight edge. Then I used my jigsaw and cut out the sections so that my beams can stick through the headboard. And with everything clamped together and square, I could go ahead and screw it all in. I decided to add some pocket holes on the sides of the headboard as well, that way it could tie into the beams. And I framed the headboard with some select pine 1x2s, and I just used a brad nailer and mitered corners. Once everything was attached, I came back with a little bit of wood putty to fill in the nail holes as well as anywhere there might have been a seam. I also used some more 1x4s just to add some rigidity to the back of the headboard. And I glued up some 2x4 scraps together to make some 4x4 legs, that way the bed would have a little bit more support. I don't really know that it necessarily needed it, but hey, better to overbuild than underbuild. Next, I sanded everything up to 220 grit and then put 2 coats of a dark walnut Danish oil. And let me tell you, pine really soaks up finish. I went through 2 bottles. And even though Douglas fir is really similar to pine, it tends to have a little bit more of a pink heartwood compared to the pine that I used on the headboard. You can kind of see the color difference here. So what I did to fix that was we mixed a little bit of ebony stain into the Danish oil for the bed and a little bit of a red cherry finish into the headboard. That way the two sort of mixed and matched each other a lot better. Once the finish cured, the bed was done. Now, I am absolutely thrilled with how this came out. I had the design in my head for quite a while, and to finally see it realized is really rewarding, and I couldn't be more excited.
So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please hit the like button. That lets me know what kind of projects you guys are into and what you might want to see next. If this is your first time to my channel, I want to say welcome, as well as please subscribe, because I put out a new project video every week and you'll definitely want to stay updated with those. If you've got any questions or comments on this build, make sure and leave that below. I try to get to all of those and answer as many as I can. And finally, I want to give one more big thanks to Industrial by Design for sponsoring this video and helping support awesome content like this. So make sure and check out their website so you can see the lineup of the rest of their products, and if you want, follow them on Instagram too. Thanks again everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week on Modern Builds.